Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rose on September 20th on behalf of farmers in Northwest British Columbia and appealed to the Minister of Agriculture to come to their aid immediately after a disastrous summer in Northwest British Columbia that has affected so many family farms. Now, this goes back to the spring, and farmers knew very early on that there was a problem because their crops of hay just weren't growing. And by July, they knew how bad this problem was. In fact, after months of a Class 5 drought, they were in a situation where farmers were getting as little as 10% of their normal hay harvests. This is a situation, as we heard just earlier, that we've seen across all of the Western provinces. Now, I wrote to the former Minister of Agriculture back in July and appealed to her and raised this issue and asked for immediate help for farmers that were in a crisis. We were losing family farms. We were seeing farmers have to sell off their herds. Didn't hear back from the minister. And so when I rose on September 20th, well, I'll go back. I met with the Minister of Agriculture, the new Minister of Agriculture, on September 19th and told him about this situation. And I said, where is the help? And he said he hadn't even heard about the crisis. And he wasn't aware of any application from British Columbia. Of course, that application had been sitting on his desk for months. So my question to my honorable colleague across the way is, on what day? I don't want to hear help is coming soon. I don't want to hear they're working on it. On what day will farmers in Northwest British Columbia finally get the support from this federal government that they deserve?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And first and foremost, I want to thank the honourable member for his question. And obviously, when farmers go through droughts or climate change events, it's a serious event. And unfortunately, they are going through this too often. The good news, which I say good news, and it's unfortunate, is that whether it's provincial assessors or federal assessors, is that they're getting too used to assessing climate change events through agri-recovery programs. As my honourable colleague would know, is that when agri-recovery is, whether a request is made, the province will send a letter to the federal government asking for an assessment. Both the province and the federal government will do the assessment together and assess whether or not this fits into the framework. Now, obviously, I know the honourable member knows that business risk management programs, farmers already have access to that through the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership Program. And I know he knows. So farmers, whether or not they go through a climate change event or whether or not they have a bad year or a bad crop, for whatever reason, already have access to business risk management program. But after that, when the risk gets higher, then the province, if it's shared amongst other farmers, they do get access to a framework, which is the agri-recovery framework, which I explained. The province will write a letter to the federal government requesting an assessment that they both will do jointly, and they will both do the assessment jointly as to whether or not it does respect the framework that they've signed. For instance, I know the honourable member would know about the BC floods back a few years ago. Many farmers went through hardships. I know many dairy farmers. I was in the Fraser Valley where they were flooded, and whether it was fruits and vegetable or whether livestock was unfortunately had to be killed because of the major floods that happened. Public safety, the province and the federal government worked together, and then agri-recovery kicked in to ensure that the other losses that weren't covered by the regular programs would have covered the existent losses that farmers were not eligible through existing programs. I can assure my member, whether the BC floods or the hurricane in PEI, in Nova Scotia, the timeline will be respected. And I know farmers, when they're facing crisis, it can never be fast enough. It's the same thing with insurance. You know, you're facing a crisis and it can never be fast enough. But I assure you, the federal government and the BC government take into the heart that the fact that farmers are facing a crisis, we will be there and we will have good news to tell BC farmers in the northern province good news, and I can assure him that farmers will be happy with the results.
Thank the honourable member, and I'd like to just take this opportunity to just remember when comments are made that they are addressed through the chair. It was just a small comment that the member had made. The honourable member from Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think the 3 dairy farmers that had to sell their farms are going to be happy with the results. I don't think the many beef farmers that had to sell off their herds are going to be happy with the results. I'll tell you a couple of characteristics of a government that takes a crisis seriously. First of all, when a member of parliament writes the minister, they write back. And secondly, when the provincial government and the farmers of the region come to them and say there's a crisis, they don't take 3 months to make something happen. Now it's October and we still don't have help, and farmers don't have feed. They've sold off their animals, and we're losing a significant amount of our regional food security because this government, 4,000 kilometers away, is dragging its feet. So what is his message? I want to know, what is this parliamentary secretary's message to the farmers in my region that have lost their family farms? Tell me.
Then I'll have Secretary Powell.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, I know where the honourable member comes from, and I know he's doing a good job at representing his constituent and his farmers. As I've said before, no response is fast enough when you're going through a crisis, but I can assure the honourable member that the BC government and the federal government are working hand in hand to respond as quickly as possible to farmers to ensure they get the proper response. And I can assure my honourable members, farmers, as they have gone through BC floods in 2021, will be compensated, or with the program through Agri Recovery, will be responded in due time. And all I'm asking is for patience for a few more days, and I know that they will get a proper response in a short few days.